Welcome to the Bowers Museum. I'm Tara Miller, a quilt historian and curator of the exhibition, The American Quilt, Cloth and Commerce. It's a pleasure to share this virtual highlights tour with you. Consider this an introduction to the exhibition, a glimpse of what awaits you when you experience it in person. Be sure to visit before the show closes on August 30th, 2026 to take in the full depth of the detail for yourself. Beyond this exhibition, Bowers Museum offers 9 permanent galleries featuring art and artifacts from around the world. Begin planning your visit at bowers.org. The American Quilt, Cloth and Commerce is organized by the Bowers Museum. As you enter the gallery, you're greeted by the spectacular Bethlehem star. You'll notice the meticulously cut out chintz applique that has then been arranged into a lovely vignette on each of these cream-colored background areas. Sewn on with the tiniest of stitches. Made all by hand before the domestic sewing machine, this quilt tells the story of American cotton grown by enslaved African Americans that is then transported to England and then manufactured into cloth and shipped back to the United States for use in this quilt. Prior to the American Revolution, it was illegal to manufacture wool cloth for export. This was a way that Britain could hold power over the American colonies. This quilt, made in 1776 by Lucretia Smith in Massachusetts, uses wool that was grown here, woven here, and dyed here with indigo that was also grown here and processed here on American soil. This quilt is what independence looks like at the fiber level. Between 1880 and 1890, the United States imposed tariffs on importing silk manufactured cloth. Instead, we imported raw silk from China, Japan, and France. The tariffs allowed the American silk industry to catch up with European and Asian silk industries. So we're importing the raw silk and we're creating the silk cloth here in the United States. And that is also when the crazy quilt fad is wild. Between 1880 and 1890 to into about 1900, we see the crazy quilt is filled with silk and silk velvet. It was a rich tapestry. This particular crazy quilt was made in 1888. On these crazy quilts, we have patches that are very personal to the makers. It is filled with personal trinkets sewn into every patch. That was brought into ports in San Francisco and New York and carried then to areas such as Paterson, New Jersey, to the silk manufacturing mills there. Crazy quilts may look unplanned and haphazard and maybe a little chaotic, but they're very well planned and meticulously designed. In the 1880s and 1890s, a crazy quilt was all the rage. If you were a fashionable woman, you were making a crazy quilt. Women were wild for crazy quilts. And these weren't bed quilts. These were made for show. You invited your friends over and showed off your fancy needlework. With the quilt displayed on the bed or on the wall, it showed how fashionable she was. Before you had tissues in your pocket, you had the handkerchief. The handkerchief in the center of this quilt was printed to commemorate the 100th birthday of the United States. It is a Centennial handkerchief, and this quilt was made just a few years after the Centennial to celebrate America's birthday. In the 4 corners, you have the American flag, surrounded by flags of friends of the United States. In the patchwork areas, you see evidence of the abundance of fabric that was available after the Industrial Revolution. Quilts are often thought of as coming out of scarcity, but that's not true. Quilts arose out of an abundance of fabric. Following the Industrial Revolution, fabric was so cheap, cotton fabric became accessible to the masses, and the printing of it was extraordinary. In the patchwork here, in the Centennial quilt, you can see the evidence of the dye technology and the cotton manufacturing technology that then existed in the 1870s and 1880s in America. You have beautiful madder oranges, and you have purple dyes, colors that are vibrant and lively, not at all drab and boring. The quilt behind me was made in rural Alabama in the 1940s. We think of quilts today as having risen out of scarcity, and I think this is the kind of quilt that gives us that idea. Because those were hard times, women in the South in this time period who were sharecropping and farming the land were making quilts with whatever they had on hand. And often that meant doing it with fabric that their sugar, their flour, or their salt had come in. These were commodity bags, also known as feed sacks or feed bags. In this quilt, we see a variety of those feed sacks. The printed feed sacks that we see here came about in the late 1930s, when manufacturers realized that women who really needed the fabric were using those plain sacks that their sugar, flour, and salt came in. Now they were printed in pretty pastels with adorable little motifs on them, and women used these fabrics for clothing and household items. Then they would use the leftovers in their quilts. This is the back of that string quilt. You'll notice there are also feed sacks on the back of this, but these feed sacks are plain. In fact, they are sugar sacks, sugar that came in 100 pounds from Cuba. So that tells us a few things. That tells us it's before the embargo on Cuba, and it also tells us that she had access to shop goods. 100 pounds is far too much for a family to have in their home. So she would have gotten these sacks from the shop owner somewhere in her community. Either she worked for the shop, she knew the shop owner, or a place that she frequented, and she might have even just asked for the feed sacks to be given to her. When fabric was in short supply in rural, impoverished areas, you used every bit of fabric you could find. Here we have a quilt made in Orange County, California, by a group of women to celebrate the state of California. This quilt was made in 1975, right around the time of the buildup of all the excitement for the country's 200th anniversary, the bicentennial. During the bicentennial, quilting experienced a revival. We call it the Great American Quilt Revival, in fact. Women were hearkening back to what they thought of as simpler times, where items were handmade in the home. So quilting then took on a whole new meaning in the American culture. This quilt in 1975 is using the poly cotton blends, as they're called, because it was the most abundant thing available to them to use. It was very difficult in the 1970s to find a good cotton for quilts. Thank you for joining me for this virtual exploration of the American quilt, cloth, and commerce. Again, to experience this exhibition in its full depth and beauty, I encourage you to visit Bowers Museum in person. Begin planning your visit at bowers.org. On behalf of Bowers Museum, I want to thank you, as always, for your support.